Hi, I'm Benton Stokes.
And I'm Elane O'Rourke.
And this is Cocktail Theology. Okay, so sometimes we try to choose a cocktail that ties into something important. Or is at least punny or cute. That does not apply today.
Well, I don't know. I think the name of it is appropriate.
Well, I don't know how appropriate it is, but It's called the Hanky Panky. And it is made with gin, sweet vermouth, and fernet-branca.
Okay.
Which is actually classified as a bitter.
It should be.
And it's Italian. Mm-hmm. And we're going to try it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I like that. It's kind of got the Negroni thing going.
It kind of does.
But different. Mm-hmm. I like it.
Yeah, the Fernet definitely gives us a little bit of the bitter in there.
Mm-hmm. But you get so much more of the gin and the sweet vermouth because you've got, a thimbleful of Fernet in there.
Right.
I like this.
Yeah.
This could be a Negroni sub.
Yeah.
And I like hanky-panky as much as the next person.
Yeah.
So I want to explore an idea with you. And I'll tell you why we're exploring this.
Okay.
So we were talking about topics to talk about, and one of the things that came out in the list was cremation, which I know is a weird thing to say, but there it is.
There it is.
So I started doing some research about views about cremation, and I went on to the Chabad website, which is a Hasidic Orthodox Jewish website, and they're wonderful. I mean, it's really so helpful. Anyway, but I was reading about what they said about it. Their position was, why isn't it okay for Jews to be cremated? And then what happened in that is, as I was reading it, there were multiple reasons for it, but there was one I thought we could really explore, and I don't know how I feel about it, but it is making me reconsider my entire view of what I thought I wanted to happen when I died.
Wow.
I know.
Okay.
We've had the conversation about, so what do you want when you die? If either one of us has control over what happens,
right,
what do you want?
Right.
And so could you talk a little bit about your position on that so people know where we're starting from?
Yeah.
Because we're similar, I think.
Yeah. To understand kind of where I come from, I grew up in a family where family plots are a thing. And so, generations of people are buried together in a single cemetery. And so my mother's side of the family, there's a family plot where my grandparents lived. My grandfather's still there. The assumption has always been that we would all be buried together sort of in this family plot.
Okay.
But now that my parents are getting to an advanced age and they don't live anywhere near Alabama and they don't have roots in Alabama anymore the same way they used to, now my mother is thinking more about perhaps they should be buried near where they live now in Tennessee.
Okay.
But she wants us all buried together. Whenever the topic of cremation comes up, she just kind of makes a face. And I don't think she knows what she thinks about it. She just thinks it's a bad idea or it's wrong or something. Mostly probably because it's not the tradition that she's comfortable with. Okay. And for her, there's a grave that you go and you visit and you decorate it on designated days throughout the year. And it's like an honoring of a person's memory, right, to have that there. And I think for her, it's important that people who live together be buried together. Okay. So that's her take on that. Okay. That is not mine. Okay. But that's kind of what I grew up with. Okay. I didn't know anybody that had ever been cremated until I was an adult. And so cremation, since learning what it is and why people opt to do it, makes a lot of sense to me. From a practical standpoint, I'm not taking up space in the earth anywhere. There's not the expense of putting me in the ground and everything that goes along with that. It's very, very expensive. And that's not a burden that I want to pass on to my kids. And it's not something I'm really prepared to pay for right now. So it's sort of like cremation makes sense. And people are doing things with their loved ones' ashes at their bequest that are creative and life-giving, like putting them into the roots of a tree, or, scattering them in, their favorite place. Drop me off the top of Millennium Force and let me fly all over Lake Erie and end up, inside some fish.
I'm just thinking about all the people standing online who suddenly get this little cloud of Benton coming over them.
Right.
They're like, what's going on?
What's happening?
Yeah, violating 87 Ohio health laws.
So many.
Anyway, go on.
But anyway, so I think in recent years, I've had friends now, unfortunately, that have passed that opted for cremation. And I think that is a really responsible way, and I don't think it diminishes anything about having a place to go remember that person. You can still plant a tree in their memory, and that can still be a place that you go. I mean, I just feel like you can have everything that you have without a decaying corpse in the ground as a family member, like trying to remember a loved one. So my position lately, over the last few years, has really evolved to, I want to be cremated. That just makes a lot more sense.
Okay. So my mother, uncle, grandmother were all cremated, and they're all in the same niche in Inglewood, California.
Okay.
So there is a place to visit them. There is a place to honor. There's a place to leave flowers. There's a place to do all those things. So that's what I grew up with, right?
Okay.
Was cremation, but in a place.
Okay.
Okay.
Sure.
For example, the niche that their remains are in, I'm guessing, but it's probably, 18 inches wide and, 2 to 3 feet deep.
Okay.
So the container just slides in.
Sure.
There's room for one more person. I don't know who that's going to be.
You're not planning on joining that party?
I mean, up until today, I was thinking, I just don't care, right? I mean, I am not attached to my body in that sense.
Right.
I've always been an organ donor, potentially all of that kind of stuff. And I've just felt like, do what you want. I'll give you guidance if that will relieve the pressure.
Yeah.
But I don't care.
Right. And I think that's what I'm evolving to as well.
Yeah. So part of the reason I didn't care up until today, potentially, was that my theology has included the idea that at death or close to death, our soul, I hate to use this language, but I don't know any other way to do it. Our soul is released. That is, the body no longer prevents its full connection with God.
Okay.
Okay?
Sure.
But that would happen roughly around the same time as death. Give or take.
Yeah.
When I was on Chabad reading about cremation and such, I learned something about the way they think the soul works.
Really?
Yes. The first piece is that they believe, like we believe, that the soul and the body are not antagonistic.
Right.
Okay. The soul is attached to God, reaches for God, and so forth, but it's not like it's anti-body. Okay. And then there are some traditions, particularly in the East, where the physical realm, your body and the feelings of your body are to be overcome. They're part of that. It's hard to talk about it without a whole context, but they're part of the kind of rising above the material pains of the world.
Okay.
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 So in that case, the soul and the body would sort of be at odds. We don't have that in Christianity. That isn't a heresy. We don't have that.
Yeah.
But here's what at least this group of Orthodox Jews thinks, and the authorities they cited are pretty widely in the Jewish tradition. So it was interesting.
Okay.
They think that when you die, it takes a while for the soul to leave the body because the soul is attached, like emotionally attached to the body. It doesn't want to leave. And it isn't that it doesn't want to go to God. It's that it's lived its life, this part of its life with this body. And so there's this separation anxiety, I guess is the best way to put it.
Okay.
So that it happens over time, and that the soul is attached to the body in that, I wouldn't say emotional, but in that emotional way.
Okay.
For them, cremating the body is like an attack on the soul.
Oh.
Because you're damaging this thing that the soul loves and has been attached to and that matters to it.
That's interesting.
Isn't it? Mm-hmm. Which made me think about all kinds of things.
Okay.
Including, well, what about the soul leaving the body? Mm-hmm. We've talked before about, so when does the soul come into the body, whatever that means. Mm-hmm. We haven't talked much about when does it leave the body.
Right.
And notice the language I'm using, right? Without thinking about the body as opposed to my body.
Yes.
Fascinating, right?
Yep.
Anyway, so it's got me thinking about that. And I have seen people extremely newly dead, and it does not appear to be that their soul is still there. But I don't know how much of my connection with other people's souls is through their consciousness. Mm. So from that Jewish point of view, the rituals that begin at death and continue through mourning, through Kaddish, through, all the way to burial and beyond. Mm-hmm. And burial happens very quickly. It's part of this whole thing of saying sort of goodbye to the soul, wishing the soul well.
Wow.
Being tender with the container that the soul belonged to. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. And so part of what you're doing in burying the body is treating it tenderly, not because the body is itself precious, although Jewish history gives good reason to treat bodies as precious, given how many people have not treated Jewish bodies preciously.
Right, sure.
But also this idea that, this is where the soul lived for all this time, and it's attached to it.
Okay.
And that's made me go, okay, well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Suppose my soul does linger. Suppose my soul is attached to my body in a way that I don't think of because I'm such a I'm such a Greek, right? This piece, this piece, this piece, this piece. What would that mean for what should happen to my body?
Right.
Now, I've heard the Christian argument that you can't cremate because then the body can't be resurrected.
I've heard that too.
Which I find nonsense. I mean,
right.
either God can do it or God can't.
Right.
You can't choose. But I do find the other idea kind of intriguing. Thoughts?
That is interesting. I hadn't really given this a ton of thought about when the soul departs the body. Mm-hmm. But now that I'm thinking back on it, in a couple of instances, in particular, when my Aunt Frances, who was my great aunt, my mother's aunt, when she passed away, and I know that I've heard similar accounts from other people whose loved ones have passed. Anyway, she, in the moments before she took her last breath, was basically having a conversation with Jesus at the foot of the bed. And I've heard of other people who are talking about angels, seeing angels or seeing lights or seeing things in the moments before they die. Mm-hmm. And it makes me think, is that the soul leaving the body? Mm-hmm. Is that the soul experiencing what happens next before the body has actually taken its last breath?
Okay.
And then, moments later, my Aunt Frances died within just minutes. Mm-hmm. So it makes me wonder, well, is that... And is that experience meant for us?
Right.
Is that experience, meant for us to understand or get a glimpse of, not understand, but to get a glimpse of where the soul is about to go of this loved one that we have here who's dying.
Yeah.
So it makes me wonder, well, if the soul is leaving the body moments before the last breath, then the body is fairly inconsequential. But if what you're saying is true, I know that in Jewish practice, bodies are buried quickly, but in other traditions, they're not.
Right. And
even the Egyptians, mummified their loved ones. So the idea that you hold on to the body a while, days of, loved ones mourning, and all of these other world traditions where bodies are sort of revered once they pass, that actually ties in well with what you're saying. You're preserving the body while the soul says goodbye, essentially, right?
And it's tricky because certainly this view of the relationship between the body and the soul are not like Evita being in a glass coffin and on display.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because in that case, people are coming to say goodbye to that body in a particular way. Same with Lenin, right?
Right.
If you think that the body has an importance to the world in a special way, the lean into idolatry is pretty easy lean.
Yeah. You have
Right?
a point there, yeah.
But I still take your point, right? That perhaps the body plays a more important role in the overall mechanism of the integration of the soul, the spirit, and all of those things than I have liked to give it credit for at the end of a person's physical existence.
Wow. Yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah, and I'm not sure how I feel about it. I'm still thinking about it. I would love to hear from listeners on this one. But it does make me think, and it does make me wonder, even if people don't have sentimental attachment to my body, is there value in giving it an appropriate, not absurd, but an appropriate burial in order to usher me, whatever that means, into the next life? And my assumption is that my soul is constantly reaching towards God.
Yeah.
When it doesn't have a body to contend with, it's easier for it, because it's less distracted. We've talked about this a million times. But if there's also something about it in ushering me, in sending somehow,
Yeah.
what would that mean?
What
What
would
would
mean?
that do to my theology?
Right.
Right? And what would that do to my view of my body? Like how the importance or lack of importance or whatever that means of my body.
Right.
It starts being a conveyor as well as a convenience.
Yeah. Yeah, listeners, what do you think? What are your views on cremation versus burial versus something else that we didn't talk about? We would love to hear from you. Always want to hear from you. Cocktailtheology.com is where we are. We may have given you more things to think about and more questions than you had when you started listening. And that's okay. We love hearing your questions. We love hearing your comments. Please do share them. Yeah, I don't know. That's given me something to think about.
Right?
Yeah.
I find it fascinating. I'm going to be thinking about this all evening.
Well, then we're going to need more to drink.
We're going to need more hanky-panky, clearly, if we're going to keep talking about bodies. Okay.
Exactly. Thanks for listening, listeners. And by the way, wherever you're listening right now, please hit follow or subscribe so you can hear us every week on Thursday when we release new episodes like this one.
Yay!
Appreciate y'all. Bye.
Bye.